Hi, my name's Carol Ricard, and thank you so much for joining me on this episode of I Am Not Cancer. I am super excited because I have a guest on, and I really just can't wait for you all to meet him. So let me just go ahead and bring him on, and that is Ron. Woohoo!
Hi, everyone.
And full disclosure, I know Ron, we work together, and I'll just never forget this. We were talking one day, and you just happened to share about your cancer journey, and I was just so moved and inspired. I remember thinking that day, oh, I got to have him on the show. So I am so glad that you were able to join me tonight.
Me too.
Yeah. Now you have to tell everybody where you're tuning in from because you have this beautiful fireplace going. So you're somewhere cold.
I'm in the north of New Jersey, in a town called Edgewater. It's right just south of the George Washington Bridge,
Yeah.
and I live on a pier that extends out onto the Hudson River. So out my window right now is the west side of Manhattan.
Wow. Wow. Now that's kind of safer because you don't have to worry too much about hurricanes, like up there. Do you? Do you get like
Uh,
those kinds of weather things?
well, you've hit the nail on the head. Because I live on the bottom of the Palisade, the bad weather just blows right over me.
Ah,
Yeah,
that sounds like the best place to live.
it
So
really is.
yeah. Well, so on our show, really the mission is to just inspire, inform, and empower people. And I really felt like you coming on the show. I know I found your story incredibly inspiring. And so what I'd like to start with though is just have us tell us a little bit about yourself before cancer ever showed up in your life.
Well, I was working for Michael Bloomberg in New York City, his company, not as the mayor, and I was on assignment, a 2-year assignment in Hong Kong, and I was living the dream. I was traveling across the Asian cities, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Bangkok, Beijing, Shanghai, and Singapore. So I thought I was, this is it. This is the life I want to lead. But what I was doing, I didn't realize, was I was working almost 100 hours a week because I'd work really hard during the daytime. And then I'd stay up really late because New York was waking up by the time Asia was going to sleep. So I was just putting a lot of pressure and stress on my body. But I was not really aware of it because I was having fun. It was what I wanted to do. Um, and so it was an exciting life before it happened.
Wow. You know what? I knew that you had, traveled and I knew that, work and, sort of the other parts of the world. But what you just said about the different in time zones too, and it's almost as if you had sort of a dual life, right? Like you had,
True.
like then and incredible that I mean, you must have been having so much fun, to be able to put in those hours as well.
Yeah, yeah, and I really was, working for a company who's a news organization. In addition to information services, news is 24 hours a day, and he had news bureaus in all the major cities around the world, so it never turned off. So you can get on that ride and stay on that ride as long as your body could keep you there.
And then Ron, what happened? Because I'm always so amazed, different people that I have on the show and really how, they come to discovering, this diagnosis. And I'm just wondering for you, what was that like?
So it was I realized at one point I needed to take a little vacation. And my vacation was to come back here to my home right here in Edgewater, New Jersey. And I came back for 2 weeks, but I was in bed for almost 2 weeks. And, at first I thought, yeah, I've been working really hard. I probably need this rest. But I wasn't getting the rejuvenation that rest was should give you. So I said, oh, good heavens, I haven't gone to see my doctor since I started working in Asia for almost 2 years. So I made an appointment for an annual physical. And you know that something's not right when you show up and the doctor's looking at your blood tests. I'll put on the glasses as he would. And he goes, hmm. I said, what does mean? He said, well, you got a lot of stuff going on right now. I'm like, okay, tell me. He said, well, number one, you're HIV positive and you've got cancer. And I'm waiting for like the third thing that would turn this into a joke, and it never came. And I'm like, okay, that's a lot to absorb right now. Um, and that's how I found out.
Wow. Yeah, so it's not enough just to, kind of say, okay, Ron, you're this or you're this, but it was just sort of this double whammy just kind of hitting you.
It's true, and I'm 57 years old. So when I grew into a young man, this was during the AIDS crisis. So when I heard HIV, my mind automatically went death sentence, right? But logic kicked in. I knew it wasn't a death sentence, but there was a lot of stuff going on in my mind at that moment.
Yeah. And how did you handle that? Because I think, what you said is also what people experience when they hear the word cancer. They just in their mind equate it to this sort of death sentence. And um, what did you do to sort of help navigate all of that thoughts in your mind?
Well, I knew I had to. I'll tell you what happened. So I walked out of the doctor's office, which is on 14th Street, at about 9th Avenue. The Hudson River is just about 2 blocks away. And I had to go that way anyway to come back home. So I walked out of the office down 14th Street to the river, and I sat on a bench on the river. And I'm looking in the water. And for about 1 second, maybe 1.2 seconds, I said to myself, all right, are you going to jump? And in my mind, I said, that's too cold. No, I think I'm going to choose to live. I'm going to fight this. That I made a decision. For some reason, I had the option of jumping in the river, which I'm not a quitter, but I contemplated it for a second, 1.2 seconds. But then I said, no, no, I choose to live. And it was just such a decisive moment. I said, I choose to live. And then I had an obligation to call up my mother and my father. And that was an interesting conversation because they're very emotional people. And I remember calling them and I said, all right, put the speakerphone on, sit down. And I've got some very, very important news to tell you. And I got to tell you something. I need for you to be there for me, and I'm going to tell you how before I even tell you the news. I don't have the energy right now to support you and how you're going to react to this. I said, I need for you to be my mother and my father right now and support
Wow.
me. So I had to lay down a rule. I said, when I hang up the phone, you can cry all you want, but don't do that right in the next 5 minutes. And then I gave them the news, and they were remarkably supportive, which was uncharacteristic of them, but it was a delight that
Yeah.
they chose that
Wow.
path.
Okay, so when you were telling me the story, the first time, and what really just really kind of resonated with me is when you said, you make a choice to live.
Yes.
and and I happen to be of this belief that, really every moment of every day we face this choice, and
Yeah.
the choice is, do we focus on illness or do we focus on wellness?
Mhm.
and and our brain wants to pull us towards the illness. It wants to pull us towards those negative, things. And that, when you said that and you made this very conscious choice, quite honestly, I've done a lot of research and reading, because even though I worked in healthcare for 30 years, I knew nothing about cancer. And so when I was diagnosed, I wanted to learn really what I could, educate myself around. And what I found was that these remarkable stories of people that were survivors,
Mhm.
it really was their mindset. It really was making a choice that, no, I'm good. And it wasn't that I'm going to beat the cancer. It was that I'm going to live. And that was where they focused their attention. And it sounds like that's what you did as well.
It's exactly what I did, and I think it was that moment of staring into the river and saying, No, that's not what I'm going to do." But what gave me strength after that was that many people don't say anything to other people when they're really sick. I told everyone that I bumped into. I said, "Look, I just want to let you know. Here's what's happened," and most people were very supportive. In fact, people came out of the woodwork coming, "Oh, I heard you have cancer. I had it. Here's how I got through it." And by being open about it, this this network developed of supportive people that I already knew. And perhaps if I didn't say anything and I was shy about it, I would never have known. They would never have known. They would not have been able to, provide the support that they gave me, the emotional support, the talking, you know.
Well, you bring up such a really important point, and that is the power of support. And really that people kind of don't, will hesitate in putting it out there to people. And a lot of times because they don't, oh, well, I don't want to be a burden or anything. But I think they don't realize the power that
Yes.
that network can have. And just like you said, I knew a couple people in my profession in healthcare who were 20-year breast cancer survivors. And so, they were the first people I kind of went to tell. And I too, it was very interesting because we have a similar journey in that, I told people, and of course, people's first response is like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And I would be like, "Well, I'm not. I mean, I actually am grateful because I could have had this going on for so much longer and never even known about it. So
Yeah,
at least
yeah,
now I can do something."
yeah.
But yeah, the power and just creating that support network around you, it sounds like that was a really, really critical piece for you. And it's a really important piece for others as well.
It was very nurturing, very nurturing. Because not only did I choose to live, but I chose not to disappoint them either. I felt that now that people knew, now they were rooting for me to get through this. And I'm like, all right, like a sportsman, I'm going to win this.
Yeah. 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 That failure is not an option, right? It's
Yeah.
just kind of, well, that's also a little bit of your personality too.
That even the treatment, I hate needles. I despise needles. And with chemotherapy, you got to get those needles. And when you do as many chemotherapy sessions as you have to do, sometimes that needle is a little hard getting in. So I'm like, you get that needle in. You find a way to get that stuff inside my body.
now now how was your experience with chemotherapy? I mean, did you find it to be a rough road and a rough experience, or
Well, let me put it this way. Um, I always went right back to the office after chemotherapy. I went, had it done, and went back to the office because I wanted consistency in my life. And I remember I came back to the office. I'm sitting at my desk. I'm at my keyboard, and I say to the person sitting next to me, "I can't even see the keys. I feel like I'm on drugs." And he turns to me and he goes, "You are on drugs." And then there was this other time I got on the subway after chemotherapy, and somehow I didn't get to my destination. As soon as I realized I'm in the Bronx. How did I get to the Bronx? I was supposed to get off 20 stations ago, you know. But even though it played with the mind, made you a little, I probably should have gone home and gone to sleep, but I wanted to keep life real. That it happened.
well, and again, I think you bring up such a critical point. And for me, teaching wellness for 30 years and then kind of having to kind of live it in a different way. That structure and that routine, it really is so important. And I remember even though I wasn't working at the time, because I, of course, had worked in a hospital. And so it was like, well, there was no way I was. And then, of course, COVID hit,
Mm.
just a couple months into it. So then that was like, well, there's no way that I'm going back into a hospital, with my immune system so compromised.
Yes.
But I still stuck to the same routines, getting up the same time in the morning, doing my exercise, and that I think is really, really important to having, a really good outcome as well.
It's what
Um,
builds resiliency. Is staying to your diet, staying to your exercise routine, and staying to your sleep routine. Our chairwoman, Dr. Kendall, tells us that all the time. That please stay to your routines. This is what's going to get you through this period of time.
yeah. Well, and to stay to them as much as you can. So even if they have to change, like what I would say to people is, don't stay in bed. Even if you're feeling so crappy, and I mean, I've heard stories that people just their whole experience with chemo was just the complete opposite of mine. Mine was the same as yours, and that I ended up driving myself, back from my treatments, and they were, part of what it was is, and I didn't have people just drive me there to drop me off, because then once COVID hit, you couldn't have anybody go in with you. And you know what? It was a 6-hour treatment. And I was like, well, listen, I'm just going to navigate through this and, you know, kind of. And it's so funny. I don't know if I told you this, but when I discovered it was a 6-hour, chemotherapy treatment, my sister had come out from my first treatment and from California, and she's like, "Oh, 6 hours. Well, that's how long it takes me to fly to Hawaii from Los Angeles." And I was like, "Oh, that's it. So we're taking a trip. We're going to go to Recovery Island." And so all of a sudden, my chemotherapy sessions became about taking a trip to Recovery Island. And we were flying to Recovery Island, and that was where we were going to stay for a little while and come back. And
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, yeah. But I still think that again, that routine, like for some people, I had a girlfriend and I said, listen, just do not stay in your bed all day. Get up, go lay on the couch, go do something a
Yeah,
little bit different, but don't fuel it. I always think of it as sort of fueling it.
yeah,
um,
yeah. You know,
Fuel on the fire.
to answer your question about the chemotherapy experience, we're very lucky to live in the time that we do. As far as the treatment I received from HIV, that was just a couple of pills that I still take, one pill a day now. That didn't exist, back in the 80s. And as far as the chemotherapy, there was a time when they would put, it's a poison, right? And they put that into your body. And in the past, that would just not only kill the bad stuff, but would kill the good stuff too. That doesn't happen anymore because the actual chemical is wrapped in a fatty lipid. And as that goes throughout your body, it doesn't burst out of that fatty lipid until it comes in contact with the tumor. So it has a localized effect. So there's no need to be afraid of chemotherapy at all anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because I think back, and and for me as a young girl, my life was touched by cancer when my dad died when I was 14 from lung cancer. And and he actually went and did chemo, and my sister said, Carol, the chemo that dad did, back in the 70s is not the same treatments that they have available today. um, and actually, I have a guardian angel who is really was for one of the first immunotherapy trials that she went on, and stage 4 melanoma lung cancer, and really just had this remarkable and it was like, well, listen, I've got nothing to lose. Let me go ahead and do this. And so you're right. We live in a time where medicine has just really just come so far in such a
It really
short period
has.
of time.
It really has.
Oh, yeah, and access to it, and the other thing too that we have nowadays that even years ago they didn't, was really including an integrative approach. So that looking at, I know I went for treatment at Sloan Kettering, and they have this whole integrative medicine department. I what's popping into my mind? Does Penn
Right.
have? I mean, I know Penn, you know, Penn Medicine has done some phenomenal work around cancer and cancer research. It just made me think, I wonder if they have an integrative type of
Well,
department.
we just built the pavilion in Philadelphia, which is an amazing new state of the art on the planet. It's part of the hospital of the University of Pennsylvania, and the whole construction of the hospital. The rooms are adjustable, and they're all single occupancy, and they each have like a seating area for your guests. And it's I'm not going to say it's a five-star hotel, because no hospital is, but it's the nicest thing I've ever seen in a hospital. And it's something else. It's just opened recently. It's called the Pavilion, and I'm sure that cancer patients are being treated there, as are patients with all other presenting problems.
Yeah. You know what? I like to think of it as, that hospital. And I was, fortunate to work for Capital Health in Trenton, who built a new hospital as well. And there's the focus on wellness.
Mhm.
Instead of the focus on the illness, it's really what can we do to promote wellness and healing from within. And I think that's what's so exciting too in some areas of healthcare these days. It isn't just about treating the illness. It really is, how can we help this person be well and stay well, and really just treating the whole person.
It's
So
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 true.
listen, I told you I'd keep you track on time, and so we actually have just about 6 minutes left. Doesn't
Oh,
the time
wow.
fly
It
by?
sure did.
But I have a couple questions that I love to ask, my survivor guests. And the one was, how did your perception shift of the illness as you kind of first learned about it to where, as you finally got through your journey, did you have a shift in any kind of perception of it?
Of the illness itself, or of
Yeah,
life itself?
of both.
Well, of life itself, I sure appreciated every day more than I ever did. I consider, I consider I'm in overtime, right? Because in previous times, in previous points in medical achievement, I probably would not have survived that. But thanks to advances in medical science, and with the chemotherapy and the HIV medication, I realized every day from this point forward is the first day of the rest of my life. I know that's an expression you hear people say, but you got to live each day at the fullest. You really do, because you don't know when the end is. So just live, live, live.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that message, because it really is about that. And I say, if I could give people one gift in life, it would be that ability to just realize that, listen, tomorrow may not come, so just live today. And it doesn't mean be foolishly live, but it means just be present in it, and not sort of kind of so busy that you're not present. And
Yes.
I know that's something you kind of every Friday just talk about, making time, to be present, and that self-care. So yes, thank you for sharing that. So this is one other question I just love to ask everyone, and that is this: what is one or more things you would pass on to others who might be experiencing a life-threatening illness?
Choose to live. Just choose to live. Once you make that decision, the rest becomes much easier. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it's a lot easier than if you fight to fight it. To just choose to live, it'll ensure that you make the right decisions, um, both in terms of the illness and your mental health. Um, it sort of goes. It links back to what I just said before. If you choose to live, 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 live. Um, you're making the most. I think of that poem called "The Dash," where at the end of it all, there'll be only four things on your tombstone: your name, the year you were born, and the year you die. That dash in between, that's your life. Live that life. That's your dash.
Ah, I love that you mentioned the dash. That is just one of my favorites. Um, and actually, one of my other favorites is a book called Finish Strong. And it really is about, we don't get to control what happens in our life. It's how we respond to it that really makes the difference. And
Yeah.
that's what we can have control.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, what you're saying is, by choosing to live, we're actually taking control
Yes.
of our life, and sort of that energy and that destination, that movement that we go in.
Yes.
Um, and I think one other important part, and you said this earlier, and I want to come back to it, and that is don't go it alone.
Oh, no,
You
there's no
know,
need for that.
kind
There's, yeah, there's so many resources available. One a really wonderful thing about the generation that is coming. I'm a baby boomer, and baby boomers, they sort of had that stigma over the concept of mental health, and acknowledging it and addressing it. The millennials and the generations to follow have a very balanced attitude. They look at mental health exactly as they look as physical health. So take care of the body and the mind together. The resources are there.
Yeah. And you know what? I love that you say that, because for me that's sort of been what I've taught and believed in for 30 years. In fact, I don't even like the word mental illness, because we don't even say the word physical illness, right? We say, okay, I have asthma, or I have high blood pressure, or
True.
and so it always struck me as, well, then why would I say a mental illness? I have a
Yeah.
mental illness, when it really, it's depression or it's my anxiety, and just sort of put it out there what it is. But you're right. Um, I think it is just really treating and recognizing, that we are just this very integrated human being, and we really need to care for ourselves in that very same way. So, wow, those are amazing words of wisdom. And quite honestly, I think I'm going to have to make a little postcard that says, choose to live.
Yes.
um, and or choose life. I like those just two words. I like to simplify things.
That's a
it,
good point. Choose
it
life.
kind of sits in my brain, and I'm a very visual person, and so seeing that, choose life is
Yeah.
actually, Ron, that would make a great coffee cup. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, yeah, that is a great coffee cup, right?
Yeah.
Just this little reminder, every kind of little thing. I
Yeah.
think of them as anchors,
Yeah.
that when the thoughts kind of come over us, we just can hold ourselves steady in the calm, or in this place of wellness and well-being.
And
So,
even during the course of one's every day, you know, choose to be happy. You
yes.
know, choose to
Yeah.
be happy.
Well, guess what? Those are fine words to actually wrap up our session. So I want to thank you for being on. I want to thank, our viewers for tuning in, and just encourage people to come back here. If you want to catch other episodes, you can catch it at iamnotcancer.live, Live. And, I will look forward to seeing people back here. So thank you again so much, Ron. It's been great pleasure having you on here.
My pleasure.